The war had been going on for nearly 100 years. Across 1,000 star systems, the Galactic Conquered was losing. Every week brought news of another world falling to the enemy. Every month, millions more died. The Dominion moved through space like a plague, and nothing could stop them. Commander Sorrel stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the latest battle reports scroll across his screen. 3 more colonies destroyed. 2 defense fleets wiped out. The numbers blurred together after a while. He had seen so much death that it no longer shocked him. It simply made him tired. The Galactic Conquered was an alliance of 12 different species. For over 40,000 years, they had ruled the known universe together. They had built great cities on distant worlds. They had mapped the stars and conquered the darkness between them. They believed they were the masters of all creation. Then they came. No one knew where they came from. They appeared at the edge of conquered space 20 years before Sorrel was born, and they had been killing ever since. They were creatures, cold and brutal, with no interest in peace or trade. They wanted only one thing: to consume everything in their path. Sorrel turned away from his screen and looked out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, they were preparing their next attack. Somewhere out there, more of his people were about to die, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. His thoughts were interrupted by a chime at the door. He straightened his uniform and called out permission to enter. The door slid open and a young woman stepped inside. She was small and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. She wore the simple robes of an academic, not a soldier. Sorrel did not recognize her. "Commander Sorrel," she said, bowing slightly. "My name is. I am an archaeologist from the University on 7. I have come a very long way to speak with you." Sorrel frowned. He did not have time for academics. He had a war to fight. "I am very busy," he said. "Whatever you have to say, please say it quickly." Nodded, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small device. It was old and strange, covered in symbols that Sorrel did not recognize. It looked like nothing he had ever seen before. "I found this in the ruins beneath the northern mountains," said. "It is a beacon, a very old beacon. The symbols on it are in a language that predates the Conquered itself." Sorrel looked at the device with mild interest. "And what does it do?" "It contains coordinates," said. "Coordinates to a region of space called the Silent Reach." Sorrel felt a chill run down his spine. Every officer in the fleet knew about the Silent Reach. It was a quarantined zone at the edge of the galaxy, a place where no one was allowed to go. The reasons for the quarantine had been lost to history, but the warnings remained. Stay away from the Silent Reach. Nothing good lives there. "Why would I care about coordinates to Forbidden Zone?" Sorrel asked. Took a deep breath. "Because of what else I found with the beacon. There were inscriptions, Commander, very old inscriptions. They spoke of a species called the Terrans, the humans." Sorrel almost laughed. The humans were a myth, a story told to children. According to the old legends, they were a species of impossible warriors who had fought alongside the ancient races long before the Conquered was formed. They were said to be small and fragile, but filled with a fire that made them unstoppable. They never gave up. They never surrendered. They fought until they won or until they died. But they were not real. They were just a story. "The humans are a fairy tale," Sorrel said. "They do not exist." "The inscriptions say otherwise," replied. "They say the humans were real. They say they were exiled to the Silent Reach by our ancestors who feared their power. And they say the humans made a promise before they left." "What promise?" His eyes met his. "They promised to return when the stars cried out for aid." Sorrel was silent for a long moment. He looked at the beacon in his hands, then at the battle reports on his screen, then back at the beacon. He did not believe in fairy tales. He was a soldier, a man of logic and reason, but he was also desperate. The Conquered was dying. Every strategy had failed. Every weapon had proven useless against the swarms. They had tried everything. Everything except this. Even if the humans were real, Sorrel said slowly, why would they help us? According to your inscriptions, we exiled them. We sent them away because we were afraid of them. I do not know, admitted, but I know that we have no other options. That will reach 7 within the year. My home, my family, everyone I love will be destroyed. If there is even a small chance that the legends are true, we have to try. Sorrel turned back to the viewport. The stars looked cold and distant. He thought about his own family, his own home. He thought about the children on 1,000 worlds who would never grow up because they would kill them first. He thought about hope and how little of it remained. I will send a ship, he said finally. A small exploration vessel. They will follow the coordinates and see what they find. I cannot promise anything more than that. His face lit up with relief. Thank you, Commander, thank you. After she left, Sorrel stood alone on his bridge for a long time. He looked at the stars and wondered if somewhere out there, in the darkness of the silent reach, the old legends were waiting. He did not believe in fairy tales. But right now, a fairy tale was all they had left. In the archives of the conquered, buried beneath layers of dust and forgotten history, there were fragments of old texts that spoke of the humans. They described creatures who could survive injuries that would kill any other species. They described warriors who laughed in the face of death. They described a species that refused to accept defeat, no matter how impossible the odds. Most scholars dismiss these texts as fiction, exaggeration, propaganda from a time before proper record-keeping. But in the deepest archives, there was one text that troubled even the most skeptical researchers. It was a warning, written by a conquered elder over 30,000 years ago. Do not wake the humans, it said. Do not remind them that we exist. They are sleeping now, and that is good. Let them sleep forever, because if they ever wake up, if they ever remember what we did to them, then may the stars have mercy on us all. No one knew what the elder meant by those words. But soon they would find out. The exploration vessel was called the Starward Mercy. It was a small ship, built for science and discovery, not for war. Its crew numbered only 32, and most of them had never seen real combat. They were researchers and engineers, not soldiers. Captain stood at the helm and watched the stars blur past as her ship traveled through faster-than-light space. She was a tall woman with silver hair and tired eyes. She had served in the conquered fleet for over 40 years, and she had seen enough death to last several lifetimes. When Commander Sorrel gave her this mission, she had laughed in his face. "You want me to chase a fairy tale?" she had asked. "I want you to find hope," Sorrel had replied, "or prove that none exists." So here she was, flying toward the silent reach, looking for a species that probably did not exist. It was a fool's errand, but had stopped caring about that. If there was even a tiny chance of finding something that could help her people, she would take it. Her tactical officer, a young male named, approached her station. "Captain, we are approaching the coordinates. We should drop out of faster-than-light travel in approximately 3 minutes. Nodded. Any signals from the region? Nothing, Captain. The silent reach is living up to its name. Our sensors show no energy signatures, no communications, no signs of life at all. That was expected. The quarantine had been in place for thousands of years. Whatever was out there had been alone for a very long time. All hands to stations, announced over the ship's communication system. Prepare for arrival. The Starward Mercy dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a flash of light. Around them, space was dark and empty. No stars, no planets, just endless black void. "Where are we?" asked Morin, the communications specialist. She was staring at her screen with a confused expression. "My readings make no sense. This region should not be this empty." "It is not empty," said slowly. He was looking at his own screen and his face had gone pale. "Captain, I am detecting something very large, behind that dead moon." Followed his gaze. In the distance, barely visible against the darkness, was a small gray moon. It looked lifeless and cold. "Can you identify it?" "Negative, Captain, but it is massive, bigger than anything I have ever seen." Before could respond, every alarm on the ship went off at once. Red lights flashed. Sirens screamed. The crew scrambled to their stations in a panic. "What is happening?" demanded. "We have been scanned," reported. "Something is scanning our ship. The energy signature is unlike anything in our database." "Shields up, weapons ready." Captain's voice was shaking. "We are receiving a transmission." His heart stopped. A transmission from the silent reach, from a region that had been empty for 40,000 years. "Put it through," she said. The bridge speakers crackled to life, and a voice spoke. It was calm and clear, speaking perfect Concord standard language. "This is Admiral Daniel Hayes of the Terran Remnant Fleet. You have activated the old beacon. State your purpose." No one moved. No one breathed. The crew of the Starboard Mercy stared at each other in disbelief. The humans were real. Recovered first, she stepped forward and spoke into the communication system. "Admiral Hayes, this is Captain of the Conquered exploration vessel Starboard Mercy. We have come seeking aid. The Galactic Conquered is at war with an enemy called the Dominion. We are losing. Billions have died. We found an ancient beacon that led us here." There was silence on the other end. Waited, her hands trembling at her sides. When the voice returned, it was colder than before. "We know about we have been watching." "You have been watching," could not hide her shock. "You knew our people were dying and you did nothing." "The Conquered made it very clear, a long time ago, that they did not want our help. Your ancestors called us monsters. They exiled us to this place and told us to never return. They said they would destroy us if we ever showed our faces again." Closed her eyes. She knew this history, though she wished she did not. The old records were vague, but the message was clear. The ancient Conquered had feared the humans. They had seen what humans could do in battle, and it had terrified them. So they had sent them away, locked them in the darkness, and tried to forget they ever existed. Admiral Hayes said quietly, "I cannot undo what my ancestors did. I cannot change the past, but I can tell you about the present. Right now, on a world called 7, there are 8 million people waiting to die. Children, families, people who have never harmed anyone. They will reach them within the year, and when they do, they will kill everyone. Not because of hate, not because of fear, simply because that is what they do." She paused, gathering her courage. "I am not asking you to forgive us. I am asking you to save them." Another long silence. Could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. "I will bring this to the council," Hayes said finally. "No promises." The transmission ended. For a moment, the bridge was completely silent. Then the space around the Starboard Mercy lit up with movement. Ships appeared from behind the dead moon. Not one or two, but hundreds. Massive warships, each one larger than anything the Conquered had ever built. They moved in perfect formation, surrounding the tiny exploration vessel like giants surrounding an insect. "By the stars," whispered, "they are everywhere." Stared at the fleet in amazement. This was not a small group of survivors hiding in the darkness. This was an armada, a civilization. The humans had not been sleeping for 40,000 years. They had been preparing. An escort ship pulled alongside the Starboard Mercy and signaled for them to follow. Gave the order, and her ship fell into line behind the human vessel. As they flew deeper into the silent reach, the crew saw more wonders. Space stations the size of small moons, orbital habitats filled with lights and life, shipyards building vessels that imagination. "How is this possible?" asked. "They were supposed to be extinct. They were supposed to be a myth." Shook her head slowly. "They were never a myth, we just wanted them to be." The escort ship led them toward the largest vessel in the fleet. It was a carrier, kilometers long, covered in weapons and armor. On its hull, Written in letters that glowed with soft light was a name, Enduring Light. The Starward Mercy docked with the carrier, and Captain prepared to meet the humans face to face. She did not know what she would find on the other side of that airlock. She did not know if the humans would help them or turn them away. But for the first time in years, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope, the council chamber aboard the Enduring Light, was not what Captain had expected. She had seen the great halls of the Conquered, filled with gold and jewels and beautiful artwork. She had expected something similar from a species that had survived for 40,000 years. Instead, the chamber was simple: plain metal walls, hard wooden benches, a single long table where the council members sat. There was no decoration, no luxury, just function. Admiral Daniel Hayes led and her crew into the room. He was an older man with gray hair and a face full of scars. He walked with the slow confidence of someone who had seen many battles and survived them all. He did not smile. He did not show any emotion at all. "The council will hear you now," he said. Stepped forward and faced the council. There were 7 humans seated at the table, 4 men and 3 women. They watched her with expressions that gave nothing away. At the center of the table sat a woman who appeared older than the others. Her hair was white, her skin was lined with age, but her eyes were sharp and clear. She looked at the way a predator looks at its prey. "I am Cole," the woman said. "I lead this council. I am told you have come to ask for our help." "Yes," replied. "The Galactic Conquered is losing a war against the Dominion. We have been fighting for nearly 100 years, and we are running out of ships, soldiers, and time. We came here because we found an ancient beacon that led us to you." "We know about the beacon," said. "We left it behind when your ancestors exiled us. We wanted to give future generations a chance to find us if they ever needed us." She leaned forward, her eyes boring into. "But let me be clear about something, Captain. We did not hide in this place because we wanted to. We did not spend 40,000 years in the darkness by choice. Your ancestors sent us here. They looked at us and saw monsters. They said we were too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable to live among civilized beings." Lowered her head. "I know, I have read the old records. What our ancestors did was wrong." "Wrong?" His voice was cold. "They hunted us. They killed millions of our people before we escaped to this place. They told the rest of the galaxy that we were extinct. They erased us from history and turned us into a ghost story to frighten children." She stood up from her chair, and despite her age, her presence filled the room. "And now you come here, asking us to save the descendants of the people who tried to destroy us. Tell me, Captain, why should we care if the Conquered burns?" Had no answer. She looked at the council members, searching for some sign of sympathy, some hint of compassion. She found none. Their faces were stone. "I cannot give you a reason," she said finally. "I cannot undo the past. I cannot bring back the millions who died. All I can do is tell you about the people who are alive right now, the people who will die if they are not stopped." She thought about 7. She thought about the families there, the children playing in the streets, the old men and women who had lived their whole lives in peace. "They are not monsters," she continued. "They are not the ones who hurt you. They are just people trying to live their lives. Most of them do not even know you exist. They think humans are a fairy tale, a story from ancient times." She met's eyes. "If you let them die, you will not be punishing the people who wronged you. Those people are long dead. You will be punishing the innocent, and I do not believe that is who you are." The chamber was silent. The council members looked at each other and could see that her words had affected them, but she did not know if it would be enough. A younger man at the end of the table stood up. He had dark hair and kind eyes, and when he spoke, his voice was filled with emotion. "My name is Tors," he said. "I have listened to this debate many times over the years. Every time they attacked another world, every time millions more died, we had this same argument. Should we help? Should we stay hidden? Should we care about people who do not even remember we exist? He looked at his fellow council members. I understand the anger. I feel it too. Our ancestors suffered terribly because of the conquered. That pain does not go away just because time has passed. But I also know that we are not defined by what others did to us. We are defined by what we choose to do. He turned to Captain on 7, are there children? Yes, said, millions of them. And will they spare them? Will they show mercy to the young and the helpless? No, they do not show mercy to anyone. Nodded slowly, then I think we have our answer. The council members began to argue among themselves. Some agreed with, others were not convinced. They spoke of old wounds, of broken trust, of the danger of leaving the silent reach after so many years. But through it all, Cole remained silent. She watched the debate with an expression that revealed nothing. When the arguments finally died down, she raised her hand for silence. I have lived for over 300 years, she said quietly. I remember the exile. I remember the fear and the pain. I remember thinking that we would never forgive the conquered for what they did to us. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was different, softer, almost sad. But I also remember what it means to be human. We did not survive in this place because of our weapons or our technology. We survived because we never lost our humanity. We never let our pain turn us into the monsters they said we were. She looked at the conquered hurt us. That is true. But they will kill everyone, human and conquered alike, if they are not stopped. We can either wait for them to find us here, or we can go out and meet them on our terms. She stood tall, and in that moment, saw the leader who had guided her people through 40,000 years of exile. We will not let children die because of old grudges. We will not become the monsters they accused us of being. We will go to war, not because the conquered deserves our help, but because helping is who we are. She looked at the council. All in favor. One by one, the council members raised their hands. First, then Admiral Hayes, then the others, until every hand was raised. It is decided, said. The Terran remnant fleet will go to war. Felt tears running down her face. She did not try to stop them. Thank you, she whispered, thank you. Looked at her with eyes that held 40,000 years of pain, but also something else, something that looked like hope. Do not thank us yet, Captain. They are not easily defeated. Many of us will die in this war, but we have been waiting a long time for a chance to fight for something that matters. She smiled, and it was the first smile had seen from any human since she arrived. Let us show the galaxy what humans can do. Armada arrived at 7 on a cold morning in the middle of winter. Over 600 ships darkened the sky, blocking out the sun and casting shadows across the cities below. The people of the planet looked up and saw death coming for them. Commander Sorrel stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Vigilant Star, and watched the enemy fleet spread out across the system. His own fleet numbered only 120 ships. They were outnumbered 5-1. In any normal battle, those odds would be a death sentence. But Sorrel was no longer counting on a normal battle. All ships form defensive positions around the planet, he ordered. Our job is to hold the line, buy as much time as we can. His officers looked at him with fear in their eyes. They knew what he was asking them to do. He was asking them to die. Sir, his second-in-command said quietly, how much time are we buying? Sorrel did not answer. He did not know if the humans were coming. He did not know if Captain had succeeded in her mission. All he had was a faint signal he had received 3 days ago, a single word transmitted from somewhere in the silent reach. The word was, coming. It was not much, but it was all he had. The fleet began its attack. Thousands of fighters swarmed out of the larger ships like insects pouring from a hive. They moved in perfect coordination, each one following the will of the hive mind that controlled them all. There was no fear in them, no hesitation. They were machines of war, built for a single purpose. Sorrel's fleet met them head-on. Conquered ships opened fire, filling space with beams of light and explosions of energy. Fighters died by the dozens, by the hundreds, but for every one that fell, 10 more took its place. The battle raged for hours. Sorrel watched his ships die one by one. The Resolute, the Dawn's Light, each one fought until the end, taking as many with them as they could, but it was not enough. It was never enough. "Commander," his sensor officer reported, "the planetary shields are failing. If we cannot stop the soon, they will begin orbital bombardment." Sorrel clenched his fists. 8 million people lived on 7. 8 million innocent souls who had never harmed anyone. If the shields fell, they would all die. He was about to give the order to evacuate when something strange happened. Every sensor on his ship went wild. Alarms screamed. Lights flashed. His officers scrambled to understand what was happening. "Commander, we are detecting a massive energy surge at the edge of the system." Sorrel looked at the tactical display. At first, he did not understand what he was seeing. The readings were impossible. No fleet could produce that much energy. No weapons could generate that kind of power. Then the display cleared, and he saw them. Ships, hundreds of ships. They appeared from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, moving with a speed and precision that belief. They were unlike anything Sorrel had ever seen. Sleek and deadly, covered in weapons that glowed with strange light. At the front of the fleet was a ship larger than all the others. A carrier of impossible size, with a name written on its hull in letters that burned like fire. Enduring light. The humans had come. A transmission crackled through every communication system in the system, conquered and alike. The voice was calm and steady, but there was steel beneath the words. "This is Admiral Daniel Hayes of the Terran Remnant Fleet. To the Dominion, you have attacked our allies. You have slaughtered the innocent. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system, or we will show you why our ancestors were called monsters." They did not respond. They did not understand mercy, and they did not understand fear. They simply turned their fleet toward the new threat and attacked. It was a mistake they would not live to regret. The human fleet opened fire, and the universe changed forever. Sorrel had never seen weapons like these. Beams of pure energy cut through ships like knives through paper. Missiles tracked their targets with perfect accuracy, exploding inside enemy vessels and tearing them apart from within. The humans moved through the fleet like wolves through a flock of sheep. A squadron of human fighters swept past the Vigilant Star, led by a small ship with markings that identified it as belonging to Lieutenant Amy. Sorrel watched in amazement as her squadron dove straight into the heart of the formation, twisting and turning through enemy fire with impossible skill. "All fighters cover that squadron," Sorrel ordered. "Give them whatever support they need." His pilots obeyed, even though they could barely keep up. The humans flew like nothing Sorrel had ever seen. They moved as one, anticipating each other's actions, covering each other's weaknesses. It was not just skill. It was something deeper, something that came from fighting together for thousands of years. Lieutenant's squadron reached the command ship, the massive vessel that controlled the hive mind. Without the command ship, they would lose their coordination. They would become confused, disorganized, easy to defeat. Swingman, a pilot named Palmer, drew the fire of the command ship's defenses while made her approach. His ship took hit after hit, shaking and burning, but he held his position. He gave the opening she needed. She fired. A single missile, loaded with enough explosives to destroy a small moon, flew into the heart of the command ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship exploded. The blast was so bright that it blinded sensors across the system. When the light faded, the fleet was in chaos. Ships crashed into each other. Fighters flew in random patterns. The hive mind was gone, and without it they were lost. The human fleet did not hesitate. They pressed their attack, destroying ship after ship, driving the enemy back, though for the first time in their history ran. The battle was over. Sorrel stood on his bridge, surrounded by cheering officers, and stared at the tactical display. The fleet was gone. 7 was safe. 8 million people would live to see tomorrow. He opened a channel to the enduring light. "Admiral Hayes," he said, his voice breaking with emotion, "you came. After everything we did to you, you came." There was a long pause before Hayes responded. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. "That is what humans do, Commander. We protect the innocent. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. It does not matter what your ancestors did to us. What matters is what we choose to do now." Sorrel felt tears running down his face. He did not try to hide them. "How can we ever repay you?" "You do not need to repay us," Hayes said. "Just remember this day. Remember what happened here. And when the time comes when someone else needs help, do the same thing we did." He paused. "Pass it on, Commander. That is all we ask." On the surface of 7, the people looked up at the sky and saw the ships burning. They did not know who had saved them. They did not understand what had happened, but they knew one thing. They were alive. And somewhere up there, among the stars, the humans were watching over them. The news of the Battle of 7 spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within days, every world in the Conquered knew what had happened. The humans were real. They had returned, and they had done the impossible. The Dominion, shocked by their defeat, retreated to their home territory. For the first time in nearly 100 years, they stopped attacking. Their leaders did not understand what had happened at 7. They did not know how to fight an enemy that could destroy their command ships so easily. They needed time to think, to plan, to rebuild. That time gave the galaxy a chance to breathe. In the weeks that followed, delegations from every species in the Conquered traveled to the Silent Reach to meet the humans. Some came out of curiosity, some came out of fear, but most came because they wanted to understand. How had the humans survived for so long? Why had they stayed hidden? And why, after everything the Conquered had done to them, had they chosen to help? Cole answered their questions patiently. She told them about the exile, about the long years in the darkness, about the civilization the humans had built in secret. She told them about the anger and the pain, but also about the hope that had kept them going. "We never stopped believing that someday things would be different," she said. "We never stopped believing that the galaxy could be better than it was." The Conquered leaders listened. Many of them felt shame when they heard what their ancestors had done. They apologized over and over for crimes they had not committed but felt responsible for nonetheless. Accepted their apologies with grace. "The past cannot be changed," she told them, "but the future is still unwritten. What matters now is what we do next." The first step was to officially end the exile. The Conquered Grand Assembly, meeting in an emergency session, voted unanimously to rescind the ancient order that had banished humanity to the Silent Reach. The humans were free to go wherever they wanted, to live wherever they chose. After 40,000 years, they were no longer prisoners. But her people did not rush to leave their home. The Silent Reach had been their world for longer than most species had existed. It was not a prison to them anymore. It was simply where they lived. "We will rejoin the galaxy slowly," explained. "We have been apart for a very long time. We need to learn how to be neighbors again." The Conquered agreed. Ambassadors were exchanged. Trade routes were established. For the first time human ships flew openly through Conquered space, and Conquered ships were welcome in the Silent Reach. 3 months after the battle, Cole traveled to the Conquered capital world to address the Grand Assembly. It was the first time a human had set foot on that world since the exile began. Trillions of beings across the galaxy watched the broadcast. The assembly hall was filled to capacity. Representatives from every species sat in silence as walked to the central podium. She was old and frail, but her steps were steady and her eyes were clear. For 40,000 years, she began, we lived in silence. We built our civilization in the dark, far from the stars we once called home. We had every reason to hate you, every reason to let you fall. The assembly held its breath. But hatred is a choice, and so is hope. We chose hope. We chose to believe that the galaxy could be better than it was. We chose to believe that the children of today should not carry the burdens of yesterday's fear. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces before her. We are not asking to be feared again. We are not asking for power or territory or revenge. We are asking to be neighbors, partners, friends. That will return someday. Other threats will emerge. But if we stand together, all of us, we can face whatever comes. On 7, the archaeologist watched the broadcast with tears streaming down her face. Beside her, Captain smiled for the first time in months. Across the Concord, billions of beings looked up at the stars and saw them differently than they had before. The humans were no longer whispers. They were no longer ghosts. They were real, and they were here, and they had chosen to be allies instead of enemies. When finished her speech, the assembly rose to their feet. The applause was deafening. It lasted for nearly an hour. Afterward, the Concord voted to create a new alliance, one that would include both the original 12 species and humanity. They called it the New Concord, and its founding principle was simple. No species would ever be exiled again. No species would ever be forgotten. Years passed. They eventually returned, as had predicted, but this time the galaxy was ready for them. Human and Concord ships fought side by side, and together they drove the enemy back for good. The war that had lasted 100 years finally ended, not with defeat but with victory. On 7, a monument was built to commemorate the battle that had saved the planet. It depicted two figures standing side by side, one human, looking toward the horizon. At the base, an inscription read, "They remembered us when we were forgotten. They fought for us when we had forsaken them. May we never forget what it means to be worthy of such allies." Admiral Daniel Hayes, now retired from active service, visited the monument once a year. He never spoke to the crowds that gathered to see him. He simply stood there, looking at the statue, remembering the silence of the Reach and the moment when his people had chosen to answer a call they had every right to ignore. One year his granddaughter came with him. She was 7 years old, with bright eyes and endless questions. She tugged at his sleeve as they stood before the monument. "Grandpa, why did we help them, after what they did to us?" Hayes knelt down so he could look into her eyes. He thought about all the things he could say. He could talk about strategy, about how fighting the unconquered space was better than waiting for them to find the silent Reach. He could talk about politics, about the benefits of alliance and trade. He could talk about history, about old wounds and new beginnings. But in the end, he said something simpler. Because being human is not about what others deserve. It is about who we choose to be. He looked up at the stars, at the vast expanse of space that humans now traveled freely. We chose to be the ones who help. We chose to be the ones who save. We chose to be better than the people who hurt us. His granddaughter nodded slowly, as if she understood. "And that is why they call us heroes." Hayes smiled. "No, sweetheart, that is why they call us human." He stood up and took her hand, and together they walked away from the monument. Behind them, the two statues stood guard over the planet, and a human, united forever in stone. The stars shone down on them, no longer silent, no longer empty. The humans had returned, and the galaxy was better for it.